No.
I can't hear anything.
Again.
Lisa Williams, and I'm your chair for this morning's session, and I am Director of Business Development here within Agri-EPI Centre. I have great pleasure in welcoming you to the Agri-EPI Centre's webinar on Land and Grow, the China Agri-tech Opportunity. This webinar is being delivered with our Agri-EPI Centre member 8 hours ahead, and I welcome you both to this webinar. A brief introduction to Agri-EPI Centre. AEC is supported by Innovate UK to bridge the gap between industry and academia across the agri-food sector in the UK and globally. We are the go-to enabler and work with various businesses, scientists and engineers to turn ideas into new products and services that will generate economic growth and help tackle the global issue of feeding the world. This morning, you will hear from our CTO on our international engagement, Shamal, particularly in China. And should you have any questions on the work that we deliver, please don't hesitate to contact us. Just some housekeeping points. This session is being recorded. We will forward a copy of the presentation to you at the end of the presentation. All attendees are on mute and in listen-only mode. We have 10 minutes into the programme for a Q&A, which is at the end of the session, so hopefully we have significant time to go through all your questions. Please get your questions to us via the Q&A panel, and these will be addressed at the end. There's also a chat function that you will see in the GoToWebinar panel. Please, if you have any comments, please put your comments on there, and my colleague Annabelle Gardner, who's also on this webinar, will help you with any comments that you have. So for today's webinar, we have William Storman and Jake Watkin from 8 Hours Ahead, and CTO of AEC, Dr. Shamal Mahabib. So to start with the first session, I would like to welcome William. Now, I'm hoping this session goes well. So on the line, we've done a couple of run-throughs, and I will say that even though William is up in Scotland, we've had more problems with William's connectivity than what we have with Jake, who's currently in China. So I'm hoping it all goes to well, and we'll see how it goes. But we will start with William, who's managing partner of 8 Hours Ahead. William currently runs the business activities in London, leading technology sourcing and strategic partnerships. Based in New York until 2017, William returned to the UK to pursue a career in venture capital, combining his interest in evolving business models with identifying game-changing next-generation technologies and market opportunities. So William is going to be presenting this session, fingers crossed, technology works for us, on what are the opportunities in China. I will now hand over to William, and I will see you again at the end of his session when I introduce you to Shamal. Enjoy.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Lisa. I'm actually going to cut my webcam just in case that interferes with the line. So hopefully, oh wait, I'm going to get the thing back up now. Here we go. So yeah, hello everyone. Glad you could join us today. As Lisa said, I am the managing partner of 8 Hours Ahead in London, and I'm here today to talk to you about the great opportunity in China in ag tech. We're very grateful to Agri-EPI for co-hosting this with us, and look forward to getting stuck into some of the content here and to answering any questions that people have. Now, why are we discussing China in the first place? I think it's fairly obvious to say that it is a huge market, leading in many areas now, including manufacturing in many industrial areas, and increasingly across agriculture. It's a very interesting country. It represents a great opportunity, especially given that much of it is centralized in terms of how things are done. That represent unique growth opportunities, especially now in the area of scalable technologies. There's increasing focus and often government-backed focus on technology. What is less known is that the VC spend in China, that's venture capital spend in China, now essentially matches that of the United States. So there are huge opportunities for raising funding from Chinese investors, both within China and globally. And that's what China is really aiming to do. It's positioning itself now as a global player, trying to solve its own internal problems, whilst also, being a global player. And one of the key things that we think means that it's a great opportunity now for doing business in China is that when it comes to IP and IP protection, a significant corner has been turned when it comes to IP protection. And the recent cases, you can see here 60-0 in terms of international companies that were successful in defending their own IP. But we're here to talk about agriculture specifically. So here are some big figure numbers around the Chinese agricultural industry, and China really is an agricultural giant. You could have described it once upon a time as a nation of farmers. Indeed, I would still go as far to say that. Obviously, there's much more going on now than just farming, but it is a country deeply embedded with its agricultural industry, which is huge. In 2018, the gross agricultural production was $868 billion US. And it is the largest consumer of multiple products, cereals, cotton, fruit, vegetables, meat, poultry, egg, and fish. And some of the numbers coming out of the market are astonishing, and often are, they're over 50% of the globe's output. It is an absolutely huge industry. Obviously, we all know that China is a very large country in terms of its population, but also in terms of its land mass, and significant land is put towards agriculture. The interesting sort of inflection point now that is facing China is how they evolve agriculture to meet their current needs. And you can see that there are still 260 million farm households in China. and that 26% of the national workforce is still represented by agricultural workers. And they are evolving in their own way their industry to ensure that they can be at the cutting edge and provide for their own needs. And there are some key geographies as well, in particular in the northeast and the southeast along the Yangtze River, and in the southwest. Now, key to China's development and key to their current focus is the idea of agricultural modernization. And this is really where the Chinese ag-tech opportunity lies. And China has a very particular way of doing things with a centralized government effort and these 5-year plans. And it is clear that agriculture has always been key to this, central to their policy making, but they are renewing their efforts now, and it is being put at the center of what the Chinese government and therefore Chinese business will be doing in the coming 5 years. There are 6 key themes that are attached to what they would like to see happen in this agricultural modernization push. Food security, food safety, digitalization, mechanization, scale, and sustainability are all key to what they're doing. Some of those words might not surprise you, in particular maybe scale. Others might surprise you, in particular maybe sustainability. All of these are central to China's new push in agriculture. Food security is central to what they're doing. At the moment, the Chinese population represents around 22% of the world's population, and yet only between 7 to 10% of the arable land globally is what they manage. So there's a huge problem in terms of their own domestic food security issues, and that has led to huge a need for greater productivity and efficiency gains in this space whilst maintaining a sustainable process. Highlighted now by the recent pandemic, food safety is of particular importance at the moment. This shines a light on the interesting evolution that they're going through in the agricultural industry in China at the moment, which is balancing the fact that they have 260 million farmers spread across the country under their sort of socialist system. And what they are trying to do now is to work out how they can grow to have a modern agricultural industry whilst not eroding from the base of their core values. This slightly sits in opposition to the idea of scaling up, although they are finding a route through this. Scaling up is part of the government's new kind of push, the centralized effort to lead to a specialized, commercialized, vertically integrated and larger scale agricultural industry. And this is across arable and livestock and pastoral. And it is leading to some large specialized farms appearing, some larger family farms appearing, and then many what are called peasant cooperatives appearing. It used to just be that there are many, many peasant farmers. And obviously that was not an industry that was more prone to being able to adopt new technologies and to modernize. So this is where there is a new push going on with policy behind it to ensure that the Chinese agricultural industry can indeed modernize. Now, hopefully many of you will be familiar with a screen like this. This, we have developed internally alongside our Chinese corporate partners in the ag-tech industry and the government that we work with. It shows essentially the farm to fork industry flow of agriculture, showing all the particular areas in which agricultural technology can play a role, and all the areas in which we believe there are opportunities in China. Of particular note, these align often with those 6 core values and the themes that I mentioned previously. So for instance, in the first one there, you can see ag biotechnology in the bottom left. That's the on-farm inputs of crops and animal agriculture, including genetics, microbiome, nutrigenomics, breeding, and animal health. There are, in particular, things around food security, food safety, rather, and sustainability. and it goes right the way through the system. And this graphic also hints at the way that the Chinese often approach the solving of particular problems. Often the approach is led by a very macro perspective. So they tend to look at the entire industry, an entire value chain, and think, how can we solve this with one particular push, one particular policy push? And so here you can see that flow of the industry. And in our experience, the government and the corporate players at the table will look at this entire industry and try and bring in the individual groups that can cover each individual challenge along that path. Here, obviously accessing the Chinese market comes with particular challenges. My colleague Jake will cover some of those in the third part of this presentation. It is important when dealing with China to have all these kind of players at the table, providing insight into how to access the market, how to handle the particular peculiarities of the Chinese market. 8 hours as a company has spent a lot of time building up an ecosystem of supportive partners that can help us identify particular needs, particular opportunities in the market, as well as help deliver them. And in particular, we focused on strategic partners in research and development, in particular in sales channels and tech support, as well as enablers that sit in parallel to the industry in the supply chain, in finance, and in insurance. And it is through conversations with the likes of these players here, which are some of the largest agricultural companies in China, that we have been able to map the opportunities within China in agricultural technology. And Key developed essentially landing programs and particularly pilots, which enable international companies to take those tentative first steps into the market, find product market fit, and obviously key sales channels to grow. And then the Agri-EPI after this will be presenting some of their own pilots that they have co-developed with their Chinese partners. And here on the screen, you can see some of the ones that my co-founder Sam has co-developed in China alongside our Chinese partners, including the Ministry of Agriculture. We have some very niche focuses as well as some more broad focuses. We have a particular interest in the pork industry. You can see here that we have co-developed a Chongqing smart farm demonstration, which is essentially trying to develop a blueprint for the 21st century pig farm. This is a classic example of what I was saying earlier when I showed you the value flow of the different agricultural technology opportunities along that flow of industry. This is a classic example of a Chinese approach to try to solve an industry-wide problem, bringing in multiple players to do so. This is being developed with New Hope Group, who are on the previous slide, alongside the Animal Husbandry Bureau, which sits under the Ministry of Agriculture, and a local farming group called 69 Farm. The scale is quite significant. The capacity in this pilot is to scale to 3 million pigs, with the initial 2,000 sow operation underway now. Those 2,000 sows will expand to 50,000 pigs. The opportunity is then to scale this initiative up to producing 3 million pigs. And the interesting thing about this is, as I said, we are looking to bring in international technologies to apply into this entire sort of demonstration. So that could be in the breeding of pigs, that could be in the hardware and mechanization of the farm, that could be in the supply chain, as or the processing of the meat, as well as the supply chain going beyond the farm itself. So there are a huge number of opportunities that are presenting themselves. Second to this, we're working with a potential scaling partner to take this project to the next level, and 22 pig farms in the same region of southwest China. These are operated by Wen's and Muyan Group. They are two of the largest food groups in China, and typically these 22 pig farms would produce about 15 million head of pigs every year. And this particular demonstration is being co-sponsored by the Dalian Commodities Exchange. You might think, why is a commodities exchange involved? But this again speaks to the idea of this total solution with multiple players at the table, in a particular sort of peculiar Chinese approach to things. The Dalian Commodities Exchange is looking at the pricing of pork going forward, given the difficulties that there have been over the last couple of years with swine fever. There's particular interest in trying to stabilize pork prices going forward, and so that's why the Commodities Exchange is at the table. We are not only interested in pork, of course. There are a huge amount of opportunities beyond that in China. So we're also looking at an arable upgrade, a separate initiative, in a mixed arable demonstration, which is co-running with a group called SAG Group, and there are 200 demonstration plots again in southwest China. In particular, looking at fruit and veg. This is an example of where a collective is coming together to enable what are smaller pieces of land, a patchwork quilt, to come together to enable them to adopt new technologies. We have 2 additional ag opportunities as well. One in water bamboo, which I doubt will be an area of specialism for any of you, but they are looking to convert much of what they're doing into other crops, and the collective expands into many other areas. And you can see some of the acreage involved here for this pilot project is particularly significant. Slightly further away from our focus area now, the southwest, is a corn demonstration project in Inner Mongolia in the north of China. This is quite a small project, only covering 5,000 new, at its total, but with the opportunity with the government backing there to expand to a really very significant parcel of land. They're very excited to present this to you, and to, if they are of interest, to talk to you more about those. Now, here again is a slide to talk to you about how it is that we are approaching these things in collaboration with our partners. You can see here, working to implement China's pig plan. Again, and I don't want to overstress this, but this is an example of how the Chinese look to approach the solving of their own problems within their value chain, the industry. So here are the 8 key goals, essentially, that we've been tasked with as part of the smart pig farm, tasked with solving. And again, you can see, so increased PSY productivity, essentially from 16 to 25. So those are very sort of hard farming metrics. Then at the same time, number 5 is increased biosecurity, disease prevention and control. Again, a different kind of technology can come into play there to solve that problem. And then obviously, again, there are other areas like even provide non-vocational training to the rural population. When approaching these problems in China, a total plan is often needed. That might sound daunting, but that is why the likes of myself and 8 Hours Ahead, and why Agri-EPI are here. It is to support you in going into the Chinese market, to understanding what is needed, and to packaging that up and doing it in a secure, efficient and effective way. That was a very fast introduction to Chinese agriculture and the various opportunities. Very happy, obviously, to take questions later on, but I'll hand off to Shamal now, so he can talk about Agri-EPI's pilot projects.
Thanks, William. Before we head over to Shamal, I would just like to thank you for your presentation. There clearly is many opportunities within China, so we look forward to asking you some interesting questions later on. Which reminds me, for all delegates, can you please get your questions in, and we can go through these and put those to the panel at the end of today's session. So over to my colleague Shamal. Dr. Shamal Mohammed is a leading expert in digital agriculture with a strong passion for transforming the industry by developing novel and practical solutions using smart technologies to help farmers and producers optimize food production and minimize adverse environmental impacts. Shamal works with Agri-EPI partners to lead the journey to innovate technology in the ag sector by providing farmers and producers with a wide range of scientifically robust and commercially viable capabilities. Shamal is going to be presenting an overview of the Agri-EPI Centre Smart Farm Initiative in China, and I now hand over to Shamal. Thanks, Shamal.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Good morning, everyone. What I would like to do today is just to take you through some of the work we do in China, and probably starting with a bit of background. So back in 2016, UK and China signed a joint strategy for science, technology, and innovation cooperation. And part of that strategy was to deliver the flagship challenge on agricultural technology. So there was a highlight of that strategy working between China and UK, and it was mainly focused on things like productivity and competitive and innovation, and also looking at the trade opportunity for both countries, looking at the resilience and how the food system is prepared to kind of be more resilient to the price volatility, but also in terms of the external and extreme events like weather. And then obviously focusing on sustainability in the long term, improving the environment, as well as creating a food system where there is a trusted by the consumer. So that was, if you like, a background of starting a more close relationship with Chinese partners. But also, we in Agri-EPI developed a concept around a smart farm, which obviously have 4 different stages there. So the stage 1 is mainly focused on data collections and monitoring using smart technologies in field crop as well as in greenhouse vegetables. Stage 2 is kind of taking into a next step on smart analysis and then bringing this data to create a better understanding of soil and plant. Smart Farm 3.0 was kind of looking at how we can use this data, this analysis to make a better and more smart decisions and planning for crops and vegetables, and helping farmers to optimize productivity, obviously reduce cost of production, and be environmentally more sustainable. Smart Farm 4.0 is taken into a highest level where we are looking at more automated system where things like robotics, UAV, and satellite surveillance helping a much more dynamic system and helping farmers to make a more intelligence-based decision. So the Smart Farm project, we started with the Smart Farm 1.0, started in 2019 with many partners in the UK. Obviously, Agri-EPI Centre was leading that. It's funded by Innovate UK in collaboration with NERCITA, which is the National Engineering Research Centre for Information Technology and Agriculture. So the idea was to demonstrate the Smart Farm 1.0 in China and bringing partners in the UK, but also working closely with our partners in China. So in the UK, we have a company like Soil Essential who provide a data platform for collecting satellite imageries and as well as UAVs and soil data and all of farm data set can be in one place with James Hutton with data analytics, Strathclyde University with their robotics, and then also RDS with their yield monitoring technology. So this is just a sort of a summary of the project and the things we did. So we have a yield monitoring data from RDS, which you can create a yield map for all the sort of the test trial set data sets we have, and you can link the high yielded area versus low yielded area. So that will give farmers for better understanding, but also we can look at and monitor the crop throughout the season using satellite data. We also deployed Earth rover, which is similar technologies. It's been sent to Mars for taking soil analysis, and this is developed by Strathclyde University, and also can do some automated harvesting as well. So the idea was how these technologies can help improve the food production in China, as well as reducing the environmental impact of input application, for example. So this is just a sort of a show you how our partners and engineers work in China with our colleague in CETA. That was almost a year ago, June last year. We went there, we kind of installed all these technologies with their sort of capabilities, and obviously included a much larger team for this collaboration from the UK side, Agri-EPI, RDS, Soil Essential, but also British Embassy was very supportive and active and helping facilitating that collaboration with our Chinese partners, but also a big support from Innovate UK to fund the project and then demonstrate the value of UK technologies in Chinese food production system. And we worked with them quite closely in the development of the project, but also in the analysis, and also taking some of the steps forward by understanding the needs and the requirements and the challenges facing the food production system in China. Just last week, we started the next step and the next phase of our work in China, which we call them Smart Farm 1.5. This one is mainly focused on deploying technology in pig farms and detecting animal growth, welfare, and disease at the very early stages. And we working in collaboration with Tianjin Food Group, which is one of the largest food company in the world. We work with them quite closely, and this is only announced last week. We work with the UK partners like RoboScientific, which is providing innovative air sampling technology for detecting disease in pig. We work with GreenGauge, providing environmental and behavior sensors for detecting the environment and the condition of the pig farms. Also, we have Innovent, which providing 3D cameras, and that's basically trying to understand the animal behavior and detecting any anomalies in the ways the animals is behaving if there is any disease. So the idea is bringing all these technologies to develop an integrated solution for early detection of disease and helping Tianjin Food Group to improve the productivity and animal welfare of their pig business. So this is just an example of the RoboScientific technology. So you can, it's already been trials and tested in chicken and poultry. So they take air samples, they analyze it, and they will see there is quite a significant difference between the air sample from an infected chicken with one which they're gonna influenza, for example. So we're trying to do the same sort of solutions for pig in China in collaboration with Tianjin Food. We're also using 3D cameras, as I mentioned. So we're already working with events and using the 3D cameras in pig farms to detect the postures and the way that the pigs, moving around in the farms. And obviously, when the pigs is got a disease, their behaviors, their movement is different from the healthy one. So by looking at and then developing an algorithm will allow Tianjin Food Group to detect the unhealthy pigs at a very early stage. Lisa, my colleague, gave you a bit of background about Agri-EPI Centre. So we are one of the 4 agri-tech centres in the UK. We are mainly focused on precision engineering technology, smart agriculture, as well as robotics. Our main focus, if you like, we have 4 areas where we are quite active: agri-robotics, agricultural engineering, which we have facilities and capabilities at Midland Hub in Shropshire. We also very active and engaged in precision crop technologies, which we have a large number of capability at Cranfield University in Southern Hub in Bedfordshire. We also work in precision livestock farming and aquaculture, specifically very active in the dairy sector. We have large capabilities and facilities for research and for commercial companies developing new solutions, but also we work quite closely with farmers on precision farming data and using that data to build and develop a new solutions for the challenges facing the industry. So this is just a few examples of the facilities we have across the UK. This is Midland Hub Facilities, and you can see we have a workshop space and office spaces for companies to work closely with our academic partners like Harvard University, which they have agriculture engineering as well. So this is where we do most of our work on agri-robotics and agriculture engineering. At Cranfield, we do a lot of work on phenotyping crops and crop monitoring using smart technologies like hyperspectral cameras. But we, in collaboration with our partners at Cranfield and CHAP, we have a glasshouse for phenotyping activity. We also have a Southwest Dairy Centre, which is basically a commercial farm working with our industry partners, Kings Hay. This is where we're demonstrating an automated and robotic version of farming. We have a robotic milking, robotic feeding. All the cows, they have multiple sensors, so we can measure and monitor the cow all the way through the supply chain, if you like. We also have a facility in Edinburgh, Northern Hub, which is obviously our head office and our facilities for food labs and the expertise in food supply chain is there, as well as we do a lot of work on aquaculture and livestock. As I mentioned, we work quite closely with the farmers. So in the UK, we have a network of 24 farmers across the UK, different sectors. And the idea behind this resource and network is basically developing a test bed for companies as well as technology and science providers to build commercial products and then test it on a commercial farm, but also using this network of farmers for a best practice to help the industry to adopt and use technologies to improve productivity, reducing environmental impact by doing knowledge exchange and knowledge transfer. So that's a very brief overview about Agri-EPI Centre, as well as some of the work we do in China. And that's it from me, and I'm happy to take any questions, and thank you very much for listening. And now I will hand it over back to Lisa. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, Shamal. That was really, really interesting. It's good to get an overview of the activities that we're doing in China. So we're going to risk it a little bit on this next one, as Jake, who is over in China, we're going to make Jake a presenter. We're going to see how it goes, see how the connectivity goes. If there are any technical problems, we will hand back over to William, who will control the presentation. But we'll see what happens. Touch wood, it's gone well so far this morning. Before I introduce Jake, a quick reminder, there's a Q&A session at the end. Please get your questions through to us. I'm seeing a few comments coming through, so that's really good. So, Jake Watkin, who is managing partner of 8 Hours Ahead. Jake currently leads the team in China and landing program for market entry and scaling of best-in-class growth stage technologies in China. Working with the government, strategic, corporate and investment partners to offer substantial grant funding, investment and scaling opportunities. Jake has ground-led multiple high-value projects in China, from international tech park development to clean natural resources projects, as well as establishing and leading the British Chamber of Commerce for over 3 years. Jake is going to be presenting on practicalities of undertaking business in China. And I now hand over to Jake, and I will see you all at the Q&A session at the end. Thanks, Jake.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, jumping straight into it. I have this in my notes as the bold statement slide, but we don't actually think it's that bold of a statement, and we hope that most of the people on this seminar will agree that having a China strategy is a must for any emerging ag-tech leader. You know, back into as far back as the 90s, when I was just a wee lad, China was only, as it was opening up, only for the world's largest companies or the very intrepid. And that continued to be true to a certain extent throughout the noughties. But as we move past the financial crisis and with the tech revolution, it's come to the point now as China emerges as the second largest economy in the world and the largest economy for a lot of technologies, that it's a must. So moving on. Of course, there still remain significant challenges, and that's what we are all here to help you to overcome. Whether you come in with us, Agri-EPI Centre, or others, if you want to enter China, you must remember, don't ever come in blind. You must do a great deal of market research. It still surprises us on the ground quite a lot how many companies will just waltz into China expecting everything to be smooth without having done much research. And a lot of people can spend significant time, research and money only to find themselves founding, and it can affect their top pro businesses as well. It's a very dangerous thing to do. So coming into, the partnerships are the most important thing. The market is the most important thing. It's really important that you have deeply qualified partnerships and that your diligence is right. And those of you who don't know China and haven't engaged the right bridge partners may find yourselves making mistakes. The government in China, you don't have to work directly with the government, but you're always going to have to interact with them. An amusing thing we often tell our partners is there's no such thing as the Chinese government. In fact, there are multiple governments, from the central level through to the ministries, through to the provincial leaderships, the city leaderships, the district leaderships, and then across through the different bureaus. In the case of predominantly here, we'll be talking about the agricultural bureau, but down to animal husbandry. That there are many, many different Chinese governments, and they're not always in coordination with each other. So having the right relationships at every level is very important. William mentioned earlier the importance of IP. Of course, this is fundamental. and a great concern of most entrant companies. But William has already mentioned that, in fact, the tide has changed, and he's very right. But it's really important to get your structure right from the very beginning, and I'll come to that a little bit later. Of course, going back to my earlier point, a foreign company can't just walk into China and without experience in the market and expect to be able to lead operations themselves on day one. You're going to have to recruit the very best senior management, even board, to take the operations forward. And this relates to the final point about having the right cross-cultural balance and systems in order to maintain project planning fluidity. So the whole reason for the establishment of our company was to provide a solution to this. You know, we're all experienced in those battles ourselves over the years. And again, we are very much demand-driven and market first. For this specific sector, William has already identified just some of the partners that we're working with and the amount of time that we've spent identifying where the gaps in the Chinese market are. So our first and foremost activity is to provide that market access, as if there isn't a market, then there is no point entering. Government relations. I myself sit here in Hangzhou at the district level rather than at those higher levels that I mentioned earlier. And we have 8 people on the ground here in my team and 8 people in the government district level operational team. We handle the landing process here before handing over to the scaling up. We have venture partnerships across multiple sectors, but many are ex-government officials to make sure we have that right access and relationship management across the board. This goes right to the top at the ministerial level with the Ministry of Science and Technology, who give us access throughout the nation to all subsidiary government departments and indeed as state-owned enterprises for that government-controlled market access. Moving on to talent and operational support. We partner from cradle to exit rather than cradle to grave with our partner companies. From the outset, our team on the ground will typically operate as your interim general manager. We will help to identify all of your key hiring needs. Again, we can sit on the board. We typically like to sit on the board if it is appropriate, because we want to be with you till the end, making sure that we're always there to support you. The process of registration, setting up local operations is handled here in my office. We can sometimes second our own staff to your team permanently if you get along very well. We are very much talent focused from the outset, as are the government. With regards to the IP equity and exit protection, the structuring of the company both offshore and onshore is seriously important, as we said. We've developed specific cross-border systems with both Simmons & Simmons, who are the international legal market leader in this field, as well as with Ernst & Young. This keeps the intellectual property offshore. This is always a major concern. So the IP is offshore. We typically license the intellectual property into the subsidiary Chinese company. And this allows also broad control of the local operational company from offshore. So you're not giving away any of the decision making, which is where it can go badly wrong. Of course, you want domestic people on your board and team, but that's important to maintain. It maintains tax efficiency and it protects your eventual exit. With access to capital, of course, this is very important, but it isn't what comes first. We have multiple levels of capital, firstly coming from the grant funding programs that we run, which are largely no strings attached. I'll come more to that later, but you can get substantial grant funding here to help mitigate your risks and your landing working capital risks. Moving onwards, as you gain market traction, we'll do what we call a China Series A. Even if you're a Series D or even a public company offshore, if you want to land and scale in China, we always call it your first capital raise domestically as the Series A. which is typically, it's very much case by case and tailored, but we look to typically 10 to 20% of the operation, that's the subsidiary company shares, for raising 10 to 40 million RMB, that's 1 to 4.5 million pounds. Before, as you go and scale to growth, we do significantly larger fundraise, but again, then only for around 10% of the equity. We have about 30 ongoing investment partnerships at this point, some of which William already outlined in the agricultural sector. Our team slide, I'll be very brief on this. We are very deeply China operationally heavy. William and Carrie sit in the London office, as has already been described, for sourcing, doing market strategies, making sure the fit is right. But the majority of our 20-strong team are on the ground across multiple cities in China, so that we are there at your side throughout all of your activities. This is our China ecosystem. I'm sitting on the East Coast right now in Hangzhou. I believe our China managing partner, Sam Priestman, is on the line. He sits in Chongqing. So those are our two core offices, but we also have partnership offices throughout China. I've already talked about our partnership with the Ministry of Science and Technology. We will in fact be opening in August the Sino-European Technology and Innovation Centre here in Hangzhou, but we will be rolling that concept out throughout China in the following 2 years across 5 cities. You can see here the beautiful West Lake in Hangzhou, which is not too far from where I sit. Whilst we encourage landing in Hangzhou, it is not necessary. You can land anywhere and you don't have to land with the Hangzhou government partnership. However, Hangzhou is the most forward-thinking tech city in China, and it has the very best government and grant policies available. Hangzhou has a metropolitan population of around 20 million, with 9 million downtown. Marco Polo, in fact, used to live here in the 14th century, and Hangzhou was famous in Italy thereafter. We have a current foreign population of about 40,000. Well, that was pre-COVID in truth. A lot of the teachers didn't make it back, but it's somewhere between 20 and 40,000 at this point, and from September expected to recover to 40,000. It's at the heart of the Yangtze River Delta that William already mentioned, an area of some 350 square kilometers, 26 major cities, many of them with a population equal to or greater than London. And we like to talk about initial Yangtze River Delta entry strategies that you can manage easily from Hangzhou and take over that local market while spreading out to Chongqing and the agricultural heartlands from our other office there and our many partnership offices throughout China. The Yangtze River Delta alone has a GDP similar to Germany. The infrastructure, if you haven't been to China and you haven't been to this region, you wouldn't believe it. It puts many parts of Europe to shame. We have great railways, great airports, and moving around is very, very, very easy. You can manage that excellent area typically within a 2-hour drive of your headquarters in Hangzhou. We have the greatest talent influxes, tech talent influxes in China for the last couple of years in a row. And that aside, it's also extremely beautiful. For living here, it's always been considered to be the most livable city in China throughout history. I am sitting right now in the Hangzhou International Talent Entrepreneurship and Innovation Park. A bit of a mouthful. Hit Heap is its name. The locals call it the Heap. I'm sitting in the building on the left on the 5th floor, just above that outdoor area that you can see. There's a really good community here. 30 international companies are already in this building. Slightly smaller companies, but it's scaling up now. We have 20 more projects committed to land this year. So we'll be expecting around 200 foreigners in this community by the end of 2020. We ourselves will be slowly taking over the left building with the Sino-European Innovation Centre. We're starting with the 3rd and 4th floors and the outside platform, but we'll be quickly moving up through 5, 6, 7, 8. Moving onwards to the actual landing packages. So typically the companies that we get behind, we We generally look for a strong Series A company all the way through to Series E or even public companies. But so far, so good. Our partner companies have been scoring very well, typically with the B or A grade. That's typically speaking, 3 to 5 million RMB, which is around £345,000 to around £575,000 in landing grants. The conditions being that you open your China headquarters here. That does not mean that you can't open other offices in China. In fact, it's of course encouraged. You want your headquarters to be here in this excellent tech epicenter with the access to that soft landing grant funding so that you can roll out throughout China and other offices. You only just have to license the IP to the headquarter company you form in Hangzhou before rollout. There have been some instances of scoring A's. We've had a few A grades, companies that are expected to have unicorn valuations, companies that have exquisite university partnerships or are in fact research institutes in themselves looking to land, are typically going to get a category A, and that goes in fact all the way up to 15 million RMB or 1.7 million pounds, and even way beyond that. Finally, moving into time, just keeping an eye on the time here. We still got 4 minutes. Moving on into
Sorry, Jake, we are supposed to be on Q&A, so if you could speed through it, that would be
okay. I'll storm through this slide, Lisa. Thank you. So the landing slide. Look, it's always case by case, and we can expedite or slow according to different companies' needs. But we talk about from the very first engagement through to the go-to-market and Series A financing stages being a process of 9 months. The government grant validations happen within the first 3. The validations are typically once a quarter. Our next one is in fact at the end of August. If people feel ready to go now and want to work with us on this, we could move now. Otherwise, the next one will be in November, and I'll leave it there for now because we can of course distribute this presentation through Agri-EPI. So much appreciated. Lisa, back to you.
wonderful. Thank you, Jake. And sorry for jumping in as well. Can I ask all other panel members? There you go. I think we're all on. So first of all, I hope you don't mind. We'll just run over a few minutes later than what we planned. Quite a few questions have come in, so thank you very much. If we don't get time to answer them all, we will forward up individually at the end. But just to start, is it important to understand the Chinese cultures and social behaviours when working in China? Jake, that was addressed to you.
Yes.
So if you don't mind answering that.
Yes, absolutely it is. And of course, you can't expect to understand those things when you turn up on day one. You've just got to keep an open mind. But yes, the importance of small things from where to sit around a dinner table to the food culture, the eating culture, to the etiquette system, which is very different to ours. Chinese people are offended by different things to we are. It takes the time to learn, but again, that's a very important part of having partnerships with groups such as Agri, ourselves, being members of the British Chamber of Commerce, the China-Britain Business Council. They are there to help and educate you as you land to make sure you don't make the most basic mistakes. But I would also say that the Chinese are the friendliest people on the planet, always very welcoming and always very forgiving. So don't be too scared about it, and you will get there when you land.
Wonderful, thank you, Jake. I'm not sure who can answer this one, but we've had a question in with regards to, can we provide information on the status of the local Chinese ag-tech market and who the key players are?
Absolutely, I'll take that one as well if you don't mind. And that's exactly what we do, and that's exactly part of our scoping, landing and scoping process. We engage the entire market. We've already got in place, we've scoped out the demand considerably over the last couple of years, and we know where the players are, but we can provide market reports on that as we engage with you. But you can get these resources elsewhere as well through the likes of the groups that I mentioned in my last response.
Just to add on top of that, the way that 8 hours ahead works, and yeah, we both mentioned it in our presentation, is that we are demand driven. So what we typically tend to do is we analyze China for the technology market needs in China, and do that in collaboration with the corporate partners that I mentioned, the government. And having identified what we call that white space in the market, that gap in the market, then we go out and find companies which we believe can solve those particular problems. So yeah, we are very much focused on where there's actual demand, and in some cases, and this is the case with the pilot projects that I presented, we are able to line up purchase orders essentially ahead of the arrival of the company. That is the most ideal outcome, because it completely de-risks the entry into the market. So as the company lands, there is already business to be had. It doesn't always work like that, but that is the most ideal outcome.
Yeah.
Can I just add one thing as well? So there is British Embassy is quite supportive, and especially the colleagues from Department of International Trade, they're always helpful to help companies to identify market opportunities in China as well, so they can provide some information.
Lovely. Shamal, actually a question for you.
Yes.
With regard to the smart farm that you presented, how do ag-tech businesses who are interested involved with this connect to this initiative?
Right. Well, first of all, if you are, Agri-EPI member, so that's one way to get involved in some of these projects. And as you know, most of these projects are competitive calls. So we work with partners, we build proposals with our UK partners as well as Chinese partners, and then we apply for funding from Innovate UK. But the best way, I think, is to be part of Agri-EPI's member, and obviously it is depend on the need and the requirement of the Chinese partners. So Smart Farm 1.0, the main focus on data collections on soil and crop. So we work with British companies who can provide that technology, while in Smart Farm 1.5 was main focus on pigs and disease and animal behavior. So we kind of work with the partners to build the same sort of a proposal to address this issue. So it depend on the Chinese requirement, but also if you are part of Agri-EPI's community and members, so you are aware of these opportunities, and we can work with you on China or maybe other countries as well.
Great, thanks, Shamal. Jake, there was the follow-up question following the one on Chinese culture, and it was any other key factors which are often causes for foreign businesses to fail in the Chinese market?
Yes, well, landing too fast, they're not really cultural factors. They're coming in too fast, moving too quickly, getting overexcited by the wrong potential partners, and really not doing your diligence properly, and ending up in a binding partnership, transferring your IP, and giving everything away too soon without having fleshed out that marketplace. Not really so much a cultural issue as a practical one.
Okay, no, thank you. William, could you tell us about how 8 hours typically interact with technology startups, equity, commercials? Oh, William, can't hear you. Jake, can you answer? I still can't hear William, unfortunately.
Yes, I certainly can, and I think the detail for that would probably be taken offline for anybody who is interested. But we typically engage in what we call a full partnership model. We consider ourselves to be co-founders of the Chinese business. So we do. Are you back, William? So we typically do take equity positions in the Chinese subsidiary companies.
I've dropped my camera, but
as well as taking small board monitoring fees and success-based completion fees. But our equity model is very much vested on success, as with everything else in the way that we work with people. But we can go into great detail with anybody who wants to hear about it.
Okay, that's wonderful. I'm not sure if we've still got William or not.
Yeah, I'm still here. I dropped my camera.
Okay. Was there anything you wanted to add, William?
No, not really. It's just, yeah, our model is success based, and basically all of our commercials are pegged against key milestones, in particular revenue being generated in China. So yeah, we are very much aligned with the interest of the company coming in. It's really important to us. When we first started looking at this problem of how do you do business in China, we realized that we can provide a solution, but the best way for us to do that would be to align ourselves as best as possible with the incoming technology. And so that's how our process and also our commercials work.
Okay. One final question. I'm conscious that we are running over. What is the main purpose of Smart Farm, Shamal?
Well, the key objective of the smart farm concept, if you like, is bringing smart technologies to help understanding the variability in the farm, in the field, as well as in animal production systems. And then in order to build a system where the farmers can access more data, analyze it in a better way, and obviously automating some of the process and operation that can improve efficiency of the system, as well as improving the environmental footprint. So it is almost reflecting the sort of the aim and mission and vision of Agri-EPI Centre. So we are here to bring new technologies into agriculture, things like radar, robotics, sensor technologies that can help farmers to understand some of this variability, because by removing the variability, farmers can manage the risk and uncertainty much better and improve the efficiency of the system. Things like applying inputs in crop food production system is a hugely important for all the farmers across the globe, but especially for China, minimizing the environmental impact of fertilizer, for example. So all of that, it requires a smart technology, a smart tool that enable farmers and growers to make a better decision. So the whole construction of a smart farm concept, if you like, is working through different phases to introduce the data collection technology, analyzing capability, as well as providing intelligence and automating the operation system across the farm and the field. So that's the whole purpose of the smart farm concept, and that's what we're trying to do with our Chinese partners step by step. Thank
Wonderful. You. Thank you. I feel I've answered, or you, the panel, have answered most questions. There may be a couple that we haven't responded to, but I promise that we will respond to you after the webinar. Before we close, can I please thank our panel and our presenters. So Jake and William from 8 Hours Ahead, and Shamal from Agri-EPI Centre. It's been an absolute pleasure to present to you all today. We've had around 30 attendees, which has been really good. It's been good to present in terms of the scale and opportunities within China, but also to hear how practically businesses can launch themselves in China. It's been a fabulous morning. I wish those of us in the UK a fantastic day, and those of us in China a wonderful evening. Again, thank you everyone. Please stay safe. Please follow Agri-EPI Centre's website and see future webinars that are coming up, and we will forward this presentation to you. So once again, thank you for joining us today, and have a good day. Goodbye.
Thank you.